Today my presentation is about game-based learning and gamification in higher education, opportunities and implications, because I'm here to tell you what can be positive and also what can go wrong and give you some problems while you are using game-based learning and gamification with your students. First of all, I want to share with you a little bit of vocabulary, let's say. With digital game-based learning, I refer to the definition of Prensky, and this definition is the use of computer-based games, also called video games, in educational context. While with the term gamification, I refer to the definition of the Turding, who define gamification an umbrella term for the use of video game elements in non-gaming system to improve user experience. With game elements, we usually mean which are the blocks, let's say, of the games, so points, badges, leaderboards, levels, so the things that compose a game. Which game? Well, in the title there are serious games. Serious games are games that are developed for purposes different from entertainment. So there are games that are developed for educational purposes, but also games developed for training purposes. So the fun part of the game is it's a bit overshadowed from the educational or training part. Serious games usually are developed by universities, small companies within projects. So usually the budget for developing them is lower than the budget for entertainment games, and for this reason they can be, let me say, less appealing than entertainment games with your students. Entertainment games are games that have been developed for entertainment purposes. So are the typical commercial game you play with. Here we have an example, which is Kerbal Space Program. Is a game that is a commercial game, but is used in education. So we can think to use also entertainment games in education. Of course, we need to design very well the activity and to know very well the game before using it with our students. Then there is gamification, so the use of game elements in non-games systems. One of the more famous application using gamification is Duolingo, which is an application for language learning, including levels, challenges, points, something that can keep the player engaged and in this way help the learners learning languages. Then there are escape room. I don't know if you are familiar with this type of game, but escape room are games in which small teams of players have to solve puzzles, find clues, and to get out of a room that can be a real room or a virtual room. And finally, another possibility is game making. Game making means the development of games by students. One application that allows students to develop games is here. You can see there is a Scratch. Scratch is an application allowing to develop different things. And among these things, there are also small and very easy games. But why should we use digital game-based learning and gamification in education? There are several reasons behind this decision. One of these is that games can support problem-based and inquiry learning because especially simulations, so the games that are simulation, allow to simulate real-life experiences and in this way enable to learn in authentic context what the learner have learned at under the theoretical point of view, and also to deal with contents in form of problems to be solved. Another point is that games are designed for graceful failure, so in the learning context, this may convey the message that failure is part of the learning process. Games can encourage a growth mindset, so the idea that abilities can grow with commitment. And the possibility in games to make mistakes and try again foster a growth mindset and fuel the idea that anyone can learn and improve. You might think that this is really important with younger students, but the study cited here carried out a study is about freshmen at the university, because a growth mindset is really important also among also for university students. Games can support students' autonomy of learning and self-regulation, because in games, players follow their pace and benefit of feedback mechanism. A very important things of games is that games usually have feedback mechanisms. So learners have an immediate feedback about the correctness of their performance, and in this way they can progress within the game, following their pace and having, let's say, an idea about their performance. Games are engaging and motivating. This is debated, and we will see in the following slides why. But in any case, we can say that this is an advantage, especially in disciplines where engagement is more difficult to achieve. And games can support collaboration and social interaction. There are a lot of games that support collaboration, that require to collaborate to achieve the goal of the game. And you as a teacher can create games that support collaboration and social interaction among your students. Last but not least, games are beneficial at cognitive, but also at behavioral level. Also, this aspect is controversial because there are studies in which these aspects are demonstrated. In other studies, games don't seem so beneficial, but in general, we have literature reviews that show that games promote knowledge acquisition, content understanding, transversal skills, and behavioral changes. Here I show you some example of game genre and their educational benefits. As I've told before, simulation games provide scenarios where theoretical knowledge can be applied. So if your students learn something, they can apply what they have learned in the game. And moreover, they support soft skills, because usually in simulation games, students need to take decisions, to collaborate with their collaborating group. So it's a way to develop soft skills. Also, role-playing games are good for developing soft skills like teamwork, problem solving. Strategy games support strategic thinking, planning, and management. Adventure games can represent contexts in which the player can learn about history or geography, and there are also commercial games that can be used with the students to learn history, also with the aim to find where there is something wrong in the history narrated in the game. And there are narrative-based games, which are that games emphasizing the story as a core element. This kind of game provide a narrative framework for exploring the contents of your disciplines. There are also implications in using games in educational context. The first one is the fact that one size does not fit for all. And this is linked to the discourse about engagement and motivation. Players have favorite types of game. If you think if you are a player, first of all, and if you think you don't play to every kind of game you can find, you have your favorite game, and this is also for your students. Researchers identified different players' profiles and different type of games that are more suitable for each kind of player type. These profiles, again, are debated in the field, but of course, we know that everyone has his preferences. And finally, there are some people who don't like playing at all. So when you propose a game-based learning activity with your students, you need to take into account these aspects. There could be a paradoxical effect that can be a loss of enjoyment or disengagement due to the fact that you are asking them to play. So it's a forced playing experience. And this can create a disengagement in students, or you can ask them to use boring games because you need to be. We need to be honest. Some serious games, especially, are not so appealing as the games to which students are accustomed. So the entertainment games are rich of possibilities, have nice graphic interfaces. Frequently, serious games have not this kind of affordances, and this can, let's say, make the experience with serious games less fun than expected. Then there are constraints imposed by timing and context, because you have lecturers which has a fixed duration, and you are in a context that might not support the use of games. So in decided to implementing game-based learning, you need to take into account that games require long period of time to be played and context that allow to play them. Another point is your familiarity with games and playing, because if you don't like games and if you don't play, can be more difficult to implement game-based learning, because one of the suggestions I'm going to give you is to know very well the game you are going to bring to your students. And if you don't like playing and you don't like games, maybe you don't want to explore the existing games, and it's not such a good idea proposing game-based learning to your students. Then I need to say that games are not efficient tools. So a game needs more time to convey a content or to explain something to your students. So a lecture is faster than using a game to convey some contents, but of course, it's a way to have your students more engaged, and sometimes it's a way to go more into depth in a content. Finally, game-based learning must be designed, and of course, you have classes. You know that your teaching should be designed, but game-based learning need an additional attention because you are bringing a technology in your classroom and to your students, and you need to know very well the game and the implication of the use of the game. These are my recommendations for game-based learning for integrating game-based learning. The first is to include briefing and debriefing. So you should never bring a game to your students and use just the game during your lecture. It's very important to have a briefing moment before the use of the game in order to explain the game and to introduce the topic, then use the game, and then a moment of debriefing afterwards to discuss what the students have learned using the game, so to avoid mistakes, misunderstandings, and to activate reflection in your students about what happened in the game. You should thoroughly explore the games before proposing them to students, especially in the case you decided to use entertainment games, which don't have educational purposes, but that can be used for educational purposes. You should calibrate gaming activities to students' knowledge, needs, and abilities. The game shouldn't be too easy for your students because in this case, it can become boring, but at the same time shouldn't be too difficult for them because it can become boring as well, because they don't achieve results, they don't proceed in the game, and this can be frustrating. I suggest you to combine games with other activities, and this is linked to the implication I have described before, because not everyone can like playing. So organizing all your course as a big game, or introducing all the contents with game cannot be suitable for all your students. So it's a good idea to balance the use of games with other activities. And finally, I suggest you to carry out ad hoc design assessments or integrate your assessment in games, because the traditional ways for assessing, your students cannot be suitable for content that have been learned using games. So you need to find the right way for assessing the learning happen through games. Or you can, in the case you want to develop your game, you can integrate your assessment in the game itself. I know that Graveler will be shown in the following part of the workshop, but I want just to say a couple of things about the advantages of using Graveler with your students. Graveler is a game, but it's also a game design environment, because you will be free to develop your own game within Graveler. And I think that there are several advantages in this, because designing your game allows you to configure the game according to your learning objectives. That is very positive for you, because you don't have to search a game that somewhat align with your objectives, but you can create the game according to your learning objectives. you can select the content to be addressed through the game. So you can decide to use Graveler for just for one part of your course or for the whole course if you think, but you are free to decide which part and which content you can address through the game. You can design the gameplay. In the following presentation, I think that the team from university will show you how to design your game and to put your game elements like points, like challenges, like everything makes it a game. Another point is that you co-design a game with your students. So use the game as a way to ask your students go into depth with the content and design a game with them for other students, for example. Or support the creation of game by your students. So ask your students to get familiar with Graveler and develop a game about the content you want they learn. Design a game using Graveler. So I think that Graveler is a very interesting tool, allow you to do a variety of things. These are the references I showed you during my presentation, and thank you for your attention.